Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to take the incredibly messy, deeply emotional human experiences of trust, secrecy, and betrayal, and we're actually going to break them down into a predictable, logical system. We usually just feel these things right in our gut, right? We kind of stumble through the pain or the confusion when our relationships fracture. But by the end of our time together today, you're going to be able to read these mechanics, diagnose them, and understand exactly why people act the way they do.
To kick things off, I want you to imagine something with me. Just imagine the absolute exhausting reality of trying to navigate your city, or, buying a simple cup of tea, or working on a project with your colleagues without being able to trust a single person. Every single interaction would have to be checked, rechecked, and doubted completely from scratch. You literally would never get anything done. Life would entirely grind to a halt. And honestly, that sheer exhaustion gives us our first major clue about human behavior.
So we're going to break this all down into 4 logical parts. First, trust as a social shortcut. Second, the logic of secrecy. Third, from secrecy to betrayal. And fourth, repair via boundaries.
Part 1. Trust, the social shortcut and human mechanics. Now, right off the bat, we need to establish that we aren't talking about good people or bad people today. We are talking purely about human mechanics and the everyday tools we use to survive socially.
Think about it. Trust exists because we humans simply cannot verify everything ourselves. It's basically a social shortcut. It helps us work, live, and cooperate when perfect certainty is just impossible. It's not some blind emotion or a naive leap of faith. Actually, trust is a highly calculated, practical judgment. You are constantly assessing whether someone is safe enough to be vulnerable with, fair enough to share your limited resources with, and, frankly, predictable enough to rely on tomorrow.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. Trust is the bet we make when certainty is unavailable. I really want you to hold on to this. Let this be your relational anchor phrase for this entire explainer, because it's the core key that makes the rest of this whole system make sense. If trust is a bet, well, people constantly look for signs of safety before they commit their chips to that bet. Which brings us to part 2, the logic of secrecy and managing risk. We've defined trust, but what happens when the cost of making that initial bet feels just a little too high? Well, that is exactly why we hide things. And looking at this from a completely objective perspective, keeping a secret doesn't mean you're automatically deceitful. Not at all. Secrecy is often just a predictable shield we use when openness feels dangerous. We hide information when the truth feels utterly unsafe. Maybe the cost of coming clean carries this overwhelming threat of deep shame or explosive conflict. Or sometimes it's just the simple fact that not every truth is meant for everyone's ears. Ultimately, secrecy is just a fundamental tool for managing and controlling our own vulnerability.
Think of it like a house with different rooms. The front room is public, right? Almost anyone can walk in and sit down. The kitchen is a bit more intimate, maybe reserved just for close friends and family. And the bedroom? That is entirely private. Now, the existence of a locked bedroom door doesn't mean the house is hostile. It simply means access is organized. Privacy is not the absence of trust. Just like you'd carefully release funds from a bank account, people release personal information slowly and carefully until a relationship proves safe enough to unlock the next door.
Let's walk through this deliberately, because understanding this dual nature is absolutely key. When secrecy simply keeps info back or controls exposure, it usually just means a person is feeling risk and managing their own vulnerability. It's protective insulation. If they delay disclosure, they might just be protecting themselves or someone else until the time is right. But look closely at how this flips. When secrecy starts hiding essential facts, it almost always means the relationship is drifting toward unfairness. Imagine one partner hiding thousands of dollars of debt in a marriage. At that point, secrecy transforms entirely from self-insulation into a corrosive manipulation of the other person's reality.
Returning to our anchor phrase, if trust is the bet we make, secrecy is the boundary around that bet. Secrecy is simply the temporary fence marking exactly where a person still feels exposed and unready. But what happens when that fence starts actively harming the person standing on the other side?
That takes us to part 3, when secrecy becomes betrayal, crossing the line. We have to shift our tone a bit here, because we really need to address the heavy emotional toll that hits when the boundary of secrecy crosses a very dangerous, damaging line.
Picture 2 people sitting in a rowboat. If both firmly believe they're heading to the exact same shore, they coordinate their efforts beautifully. They put their backs into it, rowing in rhythm.
But what happens if one person secretly changes the destination in their own mind, steering slightly off course, all while letting the other person keep rowing hard toward the original goal? The teamwork is no longer real. Betrayal isn't just a bad act, it's the total collapse of a shared picture. It's a profound power imbalance where one person privately steps outside the shared reality while still happily benefiting from the other person staying inside it and doing all the heavy lifting.
So why do people do this? Well, people usually betray not because they misunderstand the concept of trust, but because they succumb to one of 4 overwhelming internal pressures. They might lean into self-protection, terrified of the consequences if the truth comes out. They might act out of pure self-interest, just wanting an unfair advantage over the situation. Often, it's extreme conflict avoidance, indefinitely delaying a hard conversation until the lie grows way too big to control. Or it's identity protection, hiding their actions to avoid a crushing sense of shame. In that pivotal moment of betrayal, they simply value their own relief, power, comfort, or escape far more than their loyalty to the shared reality.
And the crazy thing is, betrayal is rarely a sudden event. It's actually a gradual slide down a very specific ladder. It starts innocently enough with a private feeling. You just aren't ready to share something yet. Then it drops into selective withholding, where you actively leave important parts of a story out. Next, it sinks into strategic concealment and misleading behavior, where you're actively pointing the other person in the wrong direction to cover your tracks. The breaking point hits with false consent, agreeing to things you know are based on a total lie. The ultimate betrayal happens the exact moment your concealment steers another person's life without their informed agreement.
Now, to truly build a wholesome, complete understanding of this entire topic, we absolutely have to recognize a crucial distinction. A mistake is a wrong action, sure, but there's no shared concealment. You mess up, you admit it, and it hurts, but it can be logically resolved. Betrayal, though? Betrayal is a hidden action, deeply affecting someone relying on you. A mistake hurts your partner, but betrayal shatters the shared reality entirely. It violently damages the very basis on which trust was given in the first place.
To put it visually, a mistake is like tripping on a bridge. You scuff your knee, get back up, and keep walking. Betrayal is realizing the bridge you're walking on is made entirely of fake support beams. The danger isn't just that you might fall, it's the sudden, terrifying realization that the bridge was never, ever what it appeared to be. That is exactly why betrayal is so incredibly disorienting. Your entire mental map of the relationship, of the past, and of the future becomes completely unreliable.
Which brings us to our final section. Part 4, repairing through boundaries and building it back up. Because once you see the precise mechanics of how trust breaks, you can understand exactly how this system becomes practically usable in real life to mend those fractures.
A simple, quick apology does not fix a fundamentally broken reality. It just doesn't. Repair is the slow return of a shared reality through absolute predictability. It requires words, actions, and expectations to match consistently over a long period of time to rebuild that damaged baseline. You really have to put in the immense work to prove the reality is genuinely shared once again. And if that predictability isn't there yet, well, that's when we use boundaries. A boundary isn't a cold rejection or a punishment designed to hurt the other person. Actually, it's a wise mechanism. It's a structure that makes trust possible again by safely organizing vulnerability. It's you claiming your agency and saying, hey, I understand the system now, and conditions here are unsafe right now, so I am intelligently adjusting my exposure.
Ultimately, the real reward of learning all this is not suspicion, but discernment. Understanding the hard mechanics of trust, secrecy, and betrayal doesn't make you cynical. It gives you the incredible strength to read relationships clearly and protect yourself when necessary. So now that you have this powerful lens, how will you organize your own vulnerability? And where will you place your next bet?